Have you ever witnessed someone being humiliated in the workplace for something they can't control, like the way they speak? Have you ever wanted to say something, to step in, but didn't because you were afraid of the consequences? If you've ever felt that sting of being underestimated, judged unfairly, or even outright mocked for just being you, then this story is going to hit hard. Because what started as a cruel joke by a boss who thought he was untouchable, just some comments about an employee's accent, spiraled into something he never saw coming. By the end of the story, you're going to hear the shocking words that turned the whole office silent. And you'll understand why one recording, a single moment caught on tape, became the ultimate game changer. Stay with me here, because this isn't just about workplace drama. It's about dignity. It's about power. It's about what happens when someone finally says, enough. And yes, you're going to get the answer you came here for. I promise. You're going to find out exactly what that boss said, what was on that recording, and how HR responded in a way no one expected. But more than that, you're going to walk away with something deeper, because this story is going to move you. You'll see why millions are talking about toxic workplaces, language discrimination, and how hidden recordings are now rewriting office politics across the country. These aren't just search terms trending on YouTube like workplace harassment, caught on camera, or HR revenge. This is real. It's happening right now. Maybe to someone you know. Maybe even to you. Let's be honest. There's a reason why you clicked this video. Maybe you're tired of bosses abusing their power. Maybe you've seen or felt something like this before, when someone gets mocked for their background, their culture, the way they talk. In the United States today, workplace diversity is supposed to be a strength, right? But sometimes behind those closed conference room doors, in those little side comments after meetings or those casual jokes that are anything but funny, people get reduced to punchlines. And while most victims stay silent, afraid of losing their job, their reputation, or just not being taken seriously, sometimes someone has the courage to press record. That's exactly what happened in this story. And what that recording revealed wasn't just mean-spirited remarks or a little office gossip. It exposed something far darker. And when HR heard it, everything changed. The balance of power flipped in a single afternoon. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we dive into what the boss actually said, because yes, you're going to hear it, I want you to imagine something. Picture walking into work, proud of what you bring to the table. You're good at your job. You show up early, stay late, help your coworkers, meet your deadlines. You might not have the perfect American accent, but you know your worth. Now picture your boss chuckling behind your back, imitating your voice to get a cheap laugh. And worse, he does it in front of others. And even worse, some of them laugh. That sick feeling in your chest? That tight knot in your gut? That's exactly what Anna felt. Anna was the employee. But she wasn't just a victim. She was smart, she was strategic, and most importantly, she didn't stay silent. Now, before I tell you more about Anna, let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered what HR really does with complaints? Like when people say, go to HR, do they really listen? Or do they just cover the company's back? This video is going to give you a behind-the-scenes glimpse at what really goes down when someone brings in proof. Actual, undeniable evidence. Because when Anna brought her case, she didn't just have a feeling. She had a file. And inside it, a recording that captured her boss saying things no one in leadership should ever say. It wasn't just unprofessional, it was unacceptable. You might be thinking, why didn't she just quit? A lot of people do. They get mistreated, they get gaslit, and they just walk away. But Anna? She had family to support. She had student loans. She had green card paperwork in progress. Walking away wasn't an option. That's why this story matters. Because when someone's backed into a corner, they either break or they fight back. And Anna? She chose to fight smart. She didn't yell. She didn't confront her boss in public. She stayed calm, collected, and most importantly, quietly observant. She waited week after week, documenting everything. She watched people laugh at her expense, pretend not to hear the mockery, brush it off with fake smiles and awkward silences. But she knew if she ever wanted to be heard, she had to bring proof. And when the moment came, she did. Now, you're probably wondering what the recording actually caught. What exactly did her boss say that crossed the line? Was it just a bad joke or something more serious? I'm going to tell you that. But not just yet. Because to truly understand the impact of that moment, you need to know the people in the story. The ones who laughed, the ones who stayed silent, and the one who pressed record and changed everything. Let's talk about Brad, Anna's manager. The kind of boss who thrives on dominance, always walking a little too loudly, laughing a little too hard, turning everything into a performance. He graduated from a top business school, loved throwing around phrases like company culture and team synergy, but what he really believed in was hierarchy. To Brad, Anna was an easy target. She was quiet, polite, with a slight Latin American accent he claimed was hard to follow. He'd imitate her in meetings when she wasn't there, exaggerating her pronunciation, turning her ideas into jokes. No one ever stopped him. Not once. Because Brad was well-liked, at least by those above him. He brought in numbers, he closed deals. So people looked the other way. But Anna was paying attention. And she wasn't the only one. There was James, a junior analyst who once whispered to her in the break room. I heard what he said. I'm sorry. There was Priya from accounting, who rolled her eyes every time Brad made another tone-deaf remark. People knew. But in corporate America, knowing isn't always enough. That's where the recording comes in. You see, there was one afternoon, one team lunch, where Brad got a little too comfortable. He'd had a beer. Maybe two. He thought he was among friends. And he started talking. Really talking. He joked about accents. About hiring too many ESL types. He mocked Anna by name. And this time, someone had their phone on the table. Voice memo running. No one noticed. Not even Anna, at first. But later that day, the person who'd hit record handed it to her. Said, you didn't hear it from me, but you need to have this. What happens next? That's what you're here for. And you will get the full story. I'm going to take you inside that HR meeting. You'll hear the exact moment when Brad's smile faded. When the audio played. When the room fell completely silent. And when the HR rep said something that stunned everyone. Because this wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was a legal liability. A turning point. But right now, I want you to do one thing. Think about how often we judge people by how they speak. It happens every day, in job interviews, in customer service calls, in classrooms, and yes, in boardrooms. We've all heard it. The comments, the snide remarks, the assumptions. And sometimes we let them slide. But when those words come from a person in power, they're not just ignorant. They're dangerous. That's what this story is about. So, don't click away. Not yet. Because what happens next isn't just satisfying, it's necessary. If you've ever doubted that one person could make a difference in a toxic workplace, this is your proof. If you've ever wondered whether HR actually listens, this will answer that. And if you've ever hoped to see someone finally held accountable for their cruelty, then you're going to want to stay with me. Because the moment that recording was played, something happened that no one saw coming. And in just a moment, I'll tell you exactly what it was. But first, let's go back to the day it all began. Anna had only been with the company for 11 months, but in that time, she had built a quiet reputation for being dependable, efficient, and, perhaps most frustrating to her boss, completely unfazed by office politics. She wasn't loud. She didn't fight for attention. She didn't gossip in the break room or laugh too hard at the boss's dry jokes. She just worked. And she worked well. Always early, always precise, always willing to help a colleague struggling with a spreadsheet formula or a last-minute client pitch. The thing was, Anna wasn't trying to be liked. She was trying to survive. Like many first-generation immigrants navigating corporate America, she knew there was a double standard. Her accent wasn't the only thing being judged. It was a stand-in for assumptions about her intelligence, her education, her place in that sterile, glass-walled office tower. And Brad knew how to push those buttons. He'd studied people like her just enough to know how to publicly praise while privately undermine, how to smile to her face and mock her the second she left the room. But what Brad didn't know, what no one knew, was that Anna had already started building her insurance policy. It started after a quarterly meeting 3 months ago, when Brad had corrected Anna's pronunciation during her presentation, not once, but twice, in front of the entire team. She'd said strategic initiatives slightly differently, and Brad, with a chuckle, had stopped her mid-sentence to say, "Sorry, can you say that again, Anna? I think we all need subtitles." Everyone had laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was easier than looking uncomfortable. That day, Anna walked out of the conference room not embarrassed, but sharp. She'd recognized something. This wasn't going to stop. And more importantly, no one was going to stop it for her. That night, after hours, she went back to the office under the guise of finishing a report. Instead, she spent the evening scrolling through HR policy documents, downloading whistleblower protocols, and reading the fine print about what constituted hostile workplace behavior. What she found shocked her, not because the protections weren't there, but because so few people ever used them. Maybe they didn't have proof. Maybe they didn't believe HR would act. Maybe they were just tired. That's when Anna started recording. Not always. Not obviously. Just enough to capture the patterns. The tone. The slip-ups. The moments when Brad would let his guard down and say something he'd never put in writing. At first, it was subtle things like, "We're not running a charity," or, "Anna, if you're going to be client-facing, you might want to clean up that accent." But then it escalated. A team lunch where he mimicked her voice, holding up a glass and doing an exaggerated version of her "thank you, everyone" toast. The moment he imitated another coworker from India, using a fake accent, and then laughing with a director from another department. Anna had enough for a complaint. But she waited. She needed more than whispers. She needed a smoking gun. And then came the lunch. The one where everything changed. It was supposed to be casual, a Thursday afternoon gathering for Q1 team wins at a rooftop bar just 2 blocks from the office. The kind of outing that pretends to boost morale while subtly reinforcing hierarchy. Anna didn't want to go, but showing up was part of surviving. She sat near the end of the table, close to James and Priya, and tried to focus on the veggie burger in front of her. Across from her, Brad was already on his second IPA. His voice got louder as the hour passed, his jokes more cutting. At one point, he leaned over and said, "Anna, you've got to teach me how to say quarterly projections in your accent. It makes the data sound exotic." He thought he was being clever. Everyone else thought he was being cruel. But someone, a mystery still unsolved, thought it was worth recording. The voice memo landed in Anna's inbox the next morning. No subject line, just a forwarded audio file labeled Thursday. It came from a burner email. No name. No explanation. But it was clear. Brad's voice, unmistakable, ranting and laughing. The moment he referred to Anna as the company mascot for diversity points was the line that crossed into indefensible territory. Anna played it again and again. Part of her wanted to cry. Another part wanted to delete it, walk away, start over somewhere else. But she didn't. Instead, she saved the file. Then she started putting together a timeline, emails, calendar invites, witnesses, everything she needed to build a case. But even as she did, doubts crept in. Who sent her the recording? Was it James? He'd always seemed sympathetic, always checking in with her privately, but he was also close to Brad. Maybe too close. Then again, Priya had been at the table, and she had always looked disgusted when Brad made his comments. But would she risk her job to help Anna? Or was it someone else entirely, someone who didn't even like her, but saw in that moment an opportunity to take Brad down for reasons of their own? The thing about corporate offices is, they're never as clean as they look. Behind the glass doors and polite emails, there are politics, grudges, alliances. Brad had made enemies, even if he didn't know it. There were rumors floating for months, nothing confirmed, but whispers about a budget mishap, mismanaged accounts, even a quiet reprimand from someone in upper management. Could the recording have been part of something bigger? Was Anna just a pawn in a larger game she didn't realize she was in? That uncertainty gnawed at her as she prepared her report for HR. She wasn't sure who she could trust, and worse, she didn't know who might try to stop her. The Monday after she submitted the complaint, her access to certain files was mysteriously restricted. Her calendar began populating with odd meeting times. Then, a warning email from IT about a security review. All normal or meant to rattle her. She kept her head down and waited. 3 days passed. then 5. Finally, HR called her in for a meeting. And here's where the tension reached a peak. The meeting wasn't with just one HR rep, it was with 3. And legal. They didn't tell her if Brad would be present. They didn't tell her what the agenda was. They just said, "Please come prepared to discuss your report in detail." Anna sat outside the meeting room for 20 full minutes, her phone buzzing with anxious texts from Priya. She didn't reply. She couldn't. Every second felt like the moment before a verdict. The hall was too quiet, too clean. And just before the door opened, she saw Brad walk in with a smile. What happened in that room will shock you. But not yet. Because just before the audio played, one of the HR managers looked Anna in the eye and said something that didn't make sense. Something that made her wonder, was this really about her complaint? Or had she just stumbled into something far more dangerous? And that's when everything started to unravel. Anna stepped into the conference room with every heartbeat echoing in her ears like a drum roll. She thought she was prepared. She had the file, the timeline, the recording backed up 3 different ways, on her phone, on a flash drive, and in the cloud. But nothing could have prepared her for the way Brad greeted her. Not with anger, not with denial, but with a smug smirk and a too calm, "Good to see you, Anna." It was the kind of greeting that only meant one thing: he knew something she didn't. She scanned the room quickly. 3 HR reps, a legal liaison typing on a laptop, the director of employee relations, arms folded, face unreadable, and Brad, relaxed, leaning back, as if this were just a coffee break, not a disciplinary meeting. The HR rep who'd contacted her finally spoke. "Anna, thank you for coming in. Before we begin, can you confirm that you submitted the audio file in question on Friday, March 15th? Anna nodded. "Yes," she said cautiously. "I attached it to my written complaint through the portal." But the moment she said it, something shifted. The HR rep exchanged a glance with the others. The woman from legal cleared her throat. "We've reviewed your submission," she said. "However, the audio file you referenced is not in the report. We've checked your complaint form, your email trail, even our internal system logs. There's no audio attached." Anna blinked. She felt her breath catch. That file had been uploaded. She remembered the progress bar, the confirmation screen, the moment she stared at it for a full minute to make sure it had gone through. "That's not possible," she said. "It was there. I uploaded it myself." The HR rep gave her a patient, almost patronizing smile. "It's not there now." Suddenly, Anna's pulse surged. She opened her laptop and navigated to her secure drive, where she'd saved a backup of the file. But as the folder loaded, her stomach dropped. It was empty.
Gone.
Every copy. The flash drive she'd brought? It wouldn't mount. A red blinking light. Device error. She fumbled with her phone, opening the cloud app. Login error. Temporary outage. It made no sense. Brad hadn't even said a word. He was just watching. Calm, cool, collected. That's when Anna realized this wasn't just about HR. Someone had reached into her digital files. Someone had erased the most damning piece of evidence she had. After the meeting, they told her they would keep the matter under internal review and thanked her for her time. She walked out in a haze, barely hearing their carefully worded statements. Once in the parking garage, she finally allowed herself to shake. She wasn't crazy. The file was real. She had heard it, and someone had gone to great lengths to make sure no one else would. She didn't drive home. Instead, she called James. He didn't answer. She called Priya. Straight to voicemail. Were they avoiding her? Or was something else going on? Later that night, she got an anonymous text. No contact name, just a number she didn't recognize. "Stop pushing. They're watching you now." That was all it said. No punctuation. No explanation. She stared at the message until the screen went black in her hand. Anna didn't sleep that night. She barely moved from her kitchen table, piecing together her next steps. And that's when she remembered something she hadn't thought about in years. Back when she was still in college, studying business on a student visa, she'd worked at a local coffee shop downtown. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to scrape by. Her manager back then, Luis, had taken her under his wing. He taught her how to deal with rude customers, how to fake a smile even when someone made fun of her accent, how to keep receipts for everything, in case someone tries to screw you over. He'd been let go suddenly after a disagreement with the owner, but not before telling Anna something that stayed with her. Corporate America has two rules: cover your own back and always assume someone's watching. She hadn't thought about that advice in years. Until now. The next morning, Anna decided to trace the message. She wasn't tech-savvy, but she knew someone who was. Her cousin Matteo, who worked freelance in cybersecurity, owed her a favor. She called him, explained the situation in vague terms, and sent him the number. A few hours later, he called back, his voice low and serious. "Anna, I don't know who you're dealing with, but that number? It's tied to an encrypted VoIP system used by corporate security teams. It's not someone just playing games. Whoever texted you has access, deep access." Anna's skin prickled. "Corporate security?" she repeated. "As in, someone inside the company?" Matteo hesitated. "Or someone being paid by them. Just be careful, okay? And don't trust anyone unless you're 100% sure." That warning echoed in her ears as she walked into work the next day. Brad acted like nothing had happened. James didn't even look at her. Priya smiled, but it felt different, forced. And then there was a new character in the office. A woman introduced as a temporary operations consultant. Her name was Trish, and she seemed friendly enough. But Anna noticed things. Like how Trish always seemed to be nearby when she printed anything. How she'd casually ask about Anna's background in oddly specific ways. Or how she sat in on meetings she didn't belong in, taking notes no one asked for. It was during one of those meetings that Anna noticed a strange icon appear on her laptop screen, a remote session notification that vanished before she could click it. Her heart raced. Someone was watching her device in real time. She ran a diagnostic using free software she barely knew how to navigate, and it showed multiple access points, all from internal IPs. She was being tracked. Worse, she was being set up. And just when she thought she was beginning to understand the game, an email landed in her inbox. No subject line. No sender name. Just one attachment. When she opened it, her heart stopped. It was a photo, grainy, but unmistakable. It showed Brad and her, sitting at a cafe. Except she had never met him outside the office. Not once. The timestamp said it was from 2 months ago, which meant only one thing. Someone had edited it. Someone was building a false narrative. But why? And how deep did it go? And that, right there, is where everything she thought she knew began to fracture. That same night, while Anna sat in her dim apartment trying to process the doctored photos still glowing on her laptop screen, another thread of the unraveling web quietly snapped into motion, miles away, in a quieter corner of the city. James, her co-worker who had once defended her so boldly, now sat alone in his car outside a grocery store, engine off, phone in hand. He stared at a message he couldn't explain, because it wasn't just some anonymous warning like Anna had received. This one came in the form of an email, seemingly from the company's own IT department. Subject: Urgent Access Alert. But what chilled James wasn't the subject line, it was the attachment. A screenshot of his own computer desktop, taken just hours earlier, showing an open chat conversation between him and Anna, where he'd asked if she still had the recording. A conversation he never showed to anyone else. His stomach twisted as he realized that someone had been inside his device too, watching, tracking, monitoring what he said, when he said it, and to whom. At first, he thought it had to be some sort of phishing scam, until he hovered over the sender's email and saw that it came from a verified internal address. Someone from inside the company had sent this. It wasn't a bluff. It was a message. A silent, unmistakable warning. Stop talking. He closed the email and stared into the dark, the sound of a shopping cart clattering in the distance doing little to ground him. Until that moment, he had chalked up Anna's experience as disturbing, sure, but maybe overblown. He figured it was a workplace dispute gone too far, a manager who got cocky and let something slip. But this meant it was something more. He picked up the phone to call her, only to stop. If they were watching him, they were watching her too. Calling might put her at more risk. Or worse, it might trigger something he didn't yet understand. Back in her apartment, Anna tried to find the source of the photo. She ran it through reverse image searches, metadata extractors, even submitted it to an AI forensic site that analyzed image inconsistencies. The results were haunting. The data had been scrubbed clean. No GPS coordinates. No timestamp embedded in the EXIF data. And worse, the AI flagged portions of the image as digitally manipulated, confirming what she feared: it had been fabricated. But who was capable of this level of manipulation? Not Brad. He barely knew how to copy and paste. And the HR team? They were bureaucrats. Methodical, careful, not tech-savvy. That left someone else entirely. Someone with a reason to protect Brad. Or perhaps someone with a reason to bury Anna. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Because just as she was closing her laptop, another email arrived, this time to her personal Gmail. No name, no subject. Just a single line in the body of the email: "You shouldn't have trusted James." She stared at it, stunned. Not because she believed it, but because it meant someone was trying to fracture her last remaining support system. If they were threatening James too, was it just fear? Or was there a reason to doubt him? Could he have been playing both sides? She didn't want to believe it, but that's how it starts, doesn't it? Doubt, like a whisper, creeping in. That same night, across town, James's doorbell rang just after 11 p.m. He looked through the peephole and saw nothing. Just a shadow moving at the edge of the hallway. When he opened the door, no one was there, but on the ground was a manila envelope. Inside, there were printed photos. Not of him, not of Anna, but of a woman James hadn't seen in years. His ex, Rachel, a paralegal who had once interned with the company's legal division and who had left abruptly after refusing to sign a non-disclosure agreement related to an internal incident. He hadn't connected the dots until now. Had she known something even back then? Were these photos meant to warn him or guide him? James called Anna from a burner number the next morning. They met in a nearby park, far from office Wi-Fi, with both their phones turned off and left inside the car. It felt like a scene out of a spy movie, but neither of them laughed. James showed her the photos. Anna felt her throat tighten. She didn't know the woman in them, but she recognized the background in one: the company's old legal archives office. She had passed it a dozen times but never thought much of it. Until now. James confessed about the email, the screenshot, and the fact that he had gone quiet not because he didn't care, but because he was terrified. Anna told him about the manipulated image. Together, they agreed something far more serious was happening. This wasn't just a toxic workplace. This was orchestrated. But as they left the park, something small but significant happened. Anna glanced at her windshield and noticed a sticky note tucked under the wiper blade. She pulled it off, thinking it was a parking warning, but it wasn't. It was handwritten. Just 5 chilling words in ink that looked freshly scrawled. "Stop digging. Or you're next." And that's when everything changed. Because Anna knew, without question now, that this went beyond Brad's mockery, beyond HR's silence, beyond the tech manipulation. Someone powerful had something to hide, and they were willing to cross any line to protect it. The next morning, Anna's world narrowed. It started with something small, a silence that didn't feel right. Her neighbor, an older woman named Ruth who always greeted her with a warm smile and a "good morning, sunshine," didn't open her door like she usually did when Anna passed by on the way to work. The smell of coffee that usually wafted into the hallway was absent. Anna paused, knocking lightly, calling her name. No answer. Maybe Ruth was just out, she told herself, but the knot in her stomach twisted tighter. She couldn't afford to lose herself to paranoia, but after last night's message, the scribbled warning under her windshield, every detail felt like it could mean something more. She told herself to breathe, to stay calm. But calm had become a foreign concept, like a language she hadn't spoken in years. That day at work, Anna noticed something strange. People were watching her. Not overtly, just quick glances over cubicle walls, conversations that stopped as she walked past, eyes that seemed to linger just a second too long before pretending they hadn't. At first, she thought it was her mind playing tricks on her, that she was simply projecting the fear she felt inside. But then she passed the break room and saw Brad inside, whispering to two team leads. They looked up when they saw her, then quickly turned their backs. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't even professional. It was coordinated. And Anna felt her pulse spike as she realized they weren't even trying to hide it anymore. After her shift, Anna stayed in the parking lot longer than usual, trying to decide if she was brave enough to drive home alone. Her eyes darted between the cars around her, watching for movement. She didn't see anyone, but that didn't mean no one was there. When she finally started the engine, her phone buzzed, an anonymous text from an unlisted number. Just a photo of her, sitting in her car, taken from somewhere nearby. The timestamp showed it was snapped only moments earlier. She dropped the phone in her lap, heart thundering. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. It was surveillance. Real-time, targeted, and terrifying. She raced home, locking every window, double-bolting the doors, and pulling the curtains tight. But even in her own apartment, she didn't feel safe. Every sound made her flinch. The creak of the old building settling, the buzz of a refrigerator cycling, even the wind outside scratching at the panes like fingernails on glass. She turned on music just to drown out the silence, but the lyrics only echoed her fear. She stared at her phone, wondering if calling the police would even help. What would she tell them? That someone was following her? That her co-worker's harmless joke had exploded into a conspiracy? They dismiss her, maybe even suggest she take some time off for stress. She couldn't risk that. Not now, not when she was this close to uncovering something bigger. The next day, James didn't show up at work. At first, no one said anything. But by lunchtime, someone let it slip that he had quit suddenly. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. Anna called his phone repeatedly, sent him messages, left voicemails. Nothing. She even drove to his apartment, but the lights were off and his mailbox was overflowing. That's when fear turned into something else, grief, mixed with fury. She knew James wouldn't just vanish. Not without at least telling her. Someone had made him disappear, one way or another. Whether he was hiding or had been taken out of the picture, she didn't know. All she knew was that she was next. That night, Anna opened her laptop again and began looking up Rachel, the ex-paralegal James had mentioned. But her digital footprint was suspiciously minimal. No LinkedIn. No recent social posts. The only hit she could find was an old blog post buried deep in a university archive, where Rachel had once written about corporate ethics violations during a summer internship. The post ended abruptly mid-thought, as if it had been pulled offline and then hastily restored just enough to avoid drawing attention. Anna read the final line over and over again. Sometimes, the silence in a company isn't a bug, it's a feature. The words sent a shiver down her spine. As Anna sat in the blue glow of her screen, she suddenly heard a noise from the hallway. A quiet, measured knock at her door. 3 taps. Not a neighbor. Not a delivery. Her breath caught in her throat. She moved silently, peering through the peephole, and found nothing but the empty corridor. No footsteps. No voices. She waited, hand trembling near the knob, unsure of whether to open it or not. When she finally did, cautiously, she found another envelope, this time a thick one. Inside were printed photos again, but not of Rachel. This time, they were of Anna, speaking to James in the park, taking notes, walking to her car. Even a photo of her sitting alone, crying in her kitchen, taken through the glass from outside. She dropped the envelope as if it burned her. That night, Anna didn't sleep. Not really. Her mind raced with questions. Who was behind this? What did they want? Why target her over a recording? She had a dozen theories, and none of them made sense. Was this about Brad or someone else entirely? Had James been silenced because he got too close, or because he was never on her side to begin with? And what about Rachel? Was she still out there, watching all of this unfold? Was she the key, or just another pawn who had already been taken off the board? Anna didn't know it yet, but the real danger wasn't behind her door. It wasn't in the texts or the photos or the whispers. The real danger was already inside inside the system she worked for, the company she trusted, the people she thought were on her side. And now, as she stood in her apartment surrounded by evidence she couldn't explain and threats she couldn't trace, she realized the truth wasn't just hidden. It was protected. Actively, aggressively, and without mercy. Anna stared blankly at the wall, her mind spiraling into darker corners she hadn't dared venture before. Her world had become a web of unanswered questions, but nothing prepared her for what would come next. Something so bizarre, so impossible, it shattered the fragile sense of direction she thought she still had. It began with a phone call late at night. No caller ID, just a slow static hum when she answered, followed by a single word, whispered like a breath down the line. Check. Then the call ended. At first, she dismissed it as another scare tactic, just more pressure meant to destabilize her. But the voice had sounded familiar. Not threatening.
Calm.
Soft-spoken. And that one word wouldn't leave her mind. She scoured her apartment again, checking every nook and crevice for listening devices or hidden cameras, her paranoia now morphing into obsession. That's when she remembered the old company tablet buried deep in a drawer, a leftover from an outdated onboarding program they'd quietly phased out months earlier. She hadn't turned it on in ages, but something about it itched at her thoughts. When she finally powered it up, it took several minutes to load. The screen flickered strangely, and then a system update began installing without her prompting. Her heart thudded as the screen went black, and then flickered to life with a single file open on the desktop. A video. The footage wasn't what she expected. It was grainy, taken from what looked like a conference room security camera. Brad was in the frame, pacing, speaking animatedly. But he wasn't alone.
Across from him sat James. Alive. Calm.
Engaged in conversation. And not just any conversation, they were planning something. Reviewing a list of employees, pulling up charts, even role-playing scenarios. Including the exact moment when Brad mocked Anna's accent. They had rehearsed it, line by line, expression by expression. Anna watched in stunned silence as James read his part from a script, the same script Anna now recognized as the conversation she had secretly recorded and trusted. It had been staged, or at least framed to appear genuine. Her stomach turned. Everything, the harassment, the bullying, even the recording that had triggered this nightmare, had been orchestrated.
But why?
And worse, what role had she been unknowingly playing in their twisted performance? The realization hit her like a gut punch. She hadn't uncovered a secret. She had been led straight into it. Set up, primed, and watched. And now, the very people she thought she was exposing had been guiding her every step, controlling her reactions, even feeding her false clues. It was all a psychological experiment, or worse, a loyalty test. Shaken to her core, Anna replayed the video again, searching for inconsistencies, anything to prove what she was seeing wasn't real. But the truth was undeniable. James was working with Brad willingly, and as if the universe wanted to twist the knife further, her phone buzzed again. Another message. But this time it wasn't anonymous. It was from Rachel. A selfie. Of her. With James. Smiling. Somewhere warm, tropical. The message read, "Some things are bigger than the truth, Anna. Walk away while you still can." Anna froze. Her pulse pounded in her ears. All this time, she had been chasing justice, clawing for clarity, assuming she was the underdog in a battle against corruption. But what if she was the variable in someone else's experiment? The person being observed, not for what she found, but for how she reacted? The photos, the texts, the fake allies, the fear, it was all curated, crafted, delivered like a psychological thriller written in real time. And now, it seemed the people she had trusted most weren't just misleading her. They were testing her. The final blow came when she checked her voicemail. A new message had been left just minutes earlier. This time it wasn't from James. Or Brad. Or even Rachel. It was from someone she hadn't heard from in over a year, her former mentor from the HR department who had quietly retired after an internal audit. In the message, the voice was cold, almost robotic. "You were never supposed to find that file. But now that you have, There's no one doing it. They chose you for a reason, Anna. Not because you're smart, but because you're predictable. Her hands shook as she sat in the dark, replaying every moment of the past 2 weeks in her mind. The setup, the shadows, the fake clues. She wasn't unraveling a corporate conspiracy. She was part of a controlled environment. A manipulation experiment. And worse still, she was the last to know. But then, something strange happened. The tablet screen began glitching. The file that had exposed the truth deleted itself. Then a new folder appeared, labeled Phase 2. And that's when it hit her. This wasn't the end of her nightmare. It was just the beginning. Anna had always believed there was a line between right and wrong, a line etched into her soul from childhood, reinforced by her immigrant parents' unwavering values and strengthened through every hard-earned step in her career. But now that line had blurred so completely, she couldn't tell whether she was the hero in her own story or a pawn in someone else's twisted game. The tablet that had revealed the damning video of James and Brad together had since gone dark, wiped clean before she could back up the files. And now, she was standing in her apartment, staring at Rachel, her closest confidant, who had just confessed something Anna never saw coming. "I didn't want it to be you," Rachel had whispered, her eyes wet but steady. "But they picked you. Said it had to be someone the rest of us could believe in. Someone people saw as moral. Relatable." The words sliced through Anna like a blade. She felt her breath catch in her throat, unable to move, unable to fully grasp what was unfolding. Rachel hadn't just known about the setup, she had helped engineer it. Recruited by someone higher up, she had fed Anna just enough information to guide her through the maze without ever letting her see the full picture. Every time Anna thought she was making a breakthrough, Rachel had been there, watching, measuring, reporting. And now, she stood in front of her, asking for forgiveness while handing her an ultimatum that didn't feel like a choice at all. "You can go to HR tomorrow and hand them this," Rachel said, sliding an unmarked flash drive across the table, her voice tight with emotion. "It's everything. The whole operation. The proof. You'll blow it all up, Brad, James, everyone. But they'll know it was you, Anna. They'll drag you through the mud, strip you of every accomplishment, paint you as unstable, maybe even dangerous. Or," she hesitated, "you walk away. Say nothing. Let it die. They'll offer you a promotion, a transfer. Hell, they might even let you write your own ticket. No one gets hurt. No one knows." The room was dead silent. The city lights outside blurred against the glass as Anna's hands trembled over the table. The weight of the decision crushed down on her chest. How could she live with herself if she stayed silent? But how could she survive if she spoke out? She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, fought too long to build a life that mattered. Her entire identity had been wrapped in the belief that standing up for what's right was always worth the cost. But now, the cost wasn't hypothetical, it was real. Her name, her future, her safety. Even the people around her were caught in it, entangled in ways she couldn't fully unravel. And then there was Rachel, someone she had trusted with secrets, shared holidays with, even considered family. The betrayal was like a knife twisting deeper every time she looked at her. But Anna's mind wasn't just locked in the moment. It spiraled back through every interaction, every piece of the puzzle that no longer fit. Had her team been real? Were the complaints she thought she was protecting others from also staged? Was she ever the one in control? The fear was no longer just professional, it was existential. If her instincts couldn't be trusted, what was left of her? She picked up the flash drive and stared at it. It felt heavier than it should have, like the weight of her conscience was embedded in its plastic shell. Rachel's eyes never left hers. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said softly, "but we all have something to lose, Anna. This company isn't what you think it is. You don't know how far it goes. Or who's really watching." Anna wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. But most of all, she wanted it to stop. The lies, the manipulation, the feeling that no matter which way she turned, she was cornered. But before she could speak, her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it was a video clip. A blurry, low-res feed of her younger brother, Leo, leaving his college dorm. Alone. Followed seconds later by a man in a black hoodie. Anna felt the floor vanish beneath her. This wasn't just about her anymore. They were watching her family. Her choices now had consequences that went far beyond her own life. And in that instant, everything shifted. The stakes were no longer professional. They were personal. Immediate. Terrifying. She backed away from the table, clutching the flash drive, her mind spinning. She needed time, but time was the one thing she no longer had. Every second that passed brought new threats, more doubt, deeper betrayal. And worst of all, the terrifying realization that this wasn't about justice anymore. It was about survival. The air outside was thick with tension as Anna stepped out into the night, the flash drive burning a hole in her coat pocket. Her hands trembled not from the cold, but from the adrenaline pulsing through her veins, and every passing stranger felt like a threat. She couldn't tell if she was being watched or if her mind was finally cracking under the pressure. Every shadow stretched too long. Every sound felt amplified, like the city itself had turned against her. She was alone, or at least she thought she was, until the anonymous text arrived, just 2 words. He knows. She didn't have to ask who.
Brad.
The man who once clapped her on the back during meetings, who praised her presentation style in front of clients while mocking her accent behind closed doors. The man whose charming smile now haunted her every waking thought. And worse, Rachel. The only person Anna thought she could rely on, now twisted into this spiderweb of betrayal, had vanished. Her apartment was empty, her phone disconnected. Anna had gone there that morning, hoping to plead with her, reason with her. But instead, she found a padlocked door and a neighbor who said she left in the middle of the night, with company. Anna's chest tightened. None of this made sense anymore. This wasn't just about HR or office harassment. It was something far larger, darker, deeper. She stopped on a sidewalk bench and opened the flash drive on her laptop, her fingers trembling as she navigated through layers of hidden files. What she found was sickening. Folders marked with names. Dozens of them. Not just hers, but others. Some she knew from work. Some she didn't. Each name linked to video footage, audio files, edited statements, and psychological profiles. The company wasn't just monitoring its employees. It was cataloging them, manipulating them, using them. Everything from their behavioral patterns to their social media habits. It wasn't about protecting the brand. It was about control. She clicked on a folder marked Phase 2 and found a file labeled Target, Denton. Her blood froze. Denton was a quiet guy in IT who once helped her fix a corrupted spreadsheet. She barely knew him, but there he was, video files of him in his own home, footage from his private life, and a dossier with timestamps and action points. According to the document, Denton had discovered an internal database that didn't match what the company told the government. Less than 2 weeks later, he was fired for a security breach and moved out of state. Anna suddenly remembered the look in his eyes during his last week at work. Hollow, distant, resigned. He knew. And now she knew too. She barely had time to process the implications before another call came through, this time from a blocked number. A distorted voice told her to drop the flash drive in a garbage can at the corner of 42nd and Main or her brother might go missing. The voice didn't scream. It didn't threaten. It simply stated it, like it was a guarantee. Anna's pulse exploded in her ears. Her entire body buzzed with fear and fury. This wasn't corporate politics anymore. This was organized, calculated coercion. She had stumbled into something industrial, something dangerous. She rushed to the location, unsure whether she was making the right move, unsure whether she was walking into a trap. As she dropped the flash drive and turned to leave, a voice called her name. She spun around, and there he was, Martin, her mentor, the man who once coached her through her first major pitch, the man who'd left the company 6 months earlier after a family emergency. Only now, standing before her in the shadows, his expression wasn't that of an old friend. It was someone hardened, someone who'd seen too much. "I warned you to stop," he said quietly. "You had a way out, Anna. You didn't take it." She stared at him, mouth dry. "You're part of this?" Martin looked around, eyes scanning the empty street like every word might be heard. "We're all part of this," he muttered. "The second we sign those NDAs, we become pieces on their board. You just happen to be the wrong piece to move too far, too fast." Anna's world tilted. The man she had admired, who taught her how to navigate corporate culture with grace, had been in on it the entire time. Or worse, he had been watching her, shaping her decisions, guiding her like Rachel had.
But why?
Why her? "Because you don't lie well," Martin added, as if reading her mind. "People believe you. That makes you powerful. And dangerous." Her chest heaved with the weight of it all. She had been manipulated, gaslit, pushed into the perfect storm not because she was naive, but because she was credible. The perfect vessel for a cover story, or the perfect scapegoat for when things blew up. And now it had. "You still have a choice," Martin said. "They think you dropped the drive. But if you kept a copy," he trailed off, raising an eyebrow. Anna didn't answer. She didn't move. Because she had made a copy, hidden away, encrypted, buried deep in a cloud server under a fake name. But now, even Martin knowing that was a possibility, meant the clock was running out.
Fast.
She was being closed in on, and the walls were getting tighter with every breath. And as she watched Martin melt back into the shadows, leaving her alone again in the chilled night air, she knew one thing for certain. No one was coming to save her. She was either going to take this entire operation down, or it was going to bury her first. The storm had been building all day, both outside and within Anna. The sky now roared above the city, casting flickers of electric light over the rain-slick streets, as if even nature was holding its breath for what was coming. Anna's fingers gripped the burner phone tighter as she stood beneath the looming facade of Greystone Corporate Tower, the same building where she had once shown up early for meetings, shared coffee with colleagues, and dreamed of promotions. Now it looked like a fortress. Cold. Unfeeling. But she wasn't here as an employee anymore. She was here to end it. The final puzzle piece had arrived hours earlier in the most unexpected way. A paper envelope slid under her motel door. No name. No return address. Inside was a photo, grainy, time-stamped, and damning. It showed Brad, Rachel, and Martin in a conference room that wasn't on any of the company's blueprints. Behind them, barely legible on the whiteboard, was a project title, Perception Control Initiative. And at the bottom of the photo, scribbled in a shaky hand, one line, "They think they're gods." Anna had stared at it for an hour, her mind struggling to grasp the full scale of it. This wasn't just some HR overreach or personal vendetta. It was an organized, deliberate manipulation of narratives, employee identities, and reputations. And it had been happening for years. Dozens of careers destroyed. Mental breakdowns, false reports, planted stories, even suspected suicides. All sanctioned from the very top. And now, the final file she decrypted confirmed it. Her name had been flagged as a control subject. Everything she had gone through, every challenge, every betrayal, it was engineered. A test. She had never been a victim of circumstance. She had been a lab rat in a corporate psychology experiment. Now, drenched in rain and driven by fury, Anna stepped into the lobby with calm precision, flashing a deactivated badge she knew still worked thanks to an overlooked security protocol buried deep in the system. She passed unnoticed, her hair matted to her face, her expression unreadable. The elevator chimed softly as it rose to the top floor, executive level. The heart of the beast. Inside the boardroom, the air was deceptively still. Brad sat at the head of the table, his smile as smug as ever, flanked by Rachel, stone-faced, and Martin, who wouldn't meet her eyes. Surveillance monitors lined the far wall, all showing live feeds of offices, homes, even local news stations. Anna stepped forward, heart pounding, but voice steady. "You knew I'd come," she said quietly. Brad chuckled. "Of course we did. That was the point." That's when Rachel rose, placing a thick manila folder on the table and sliding it toward Anna. Inside was everything, the full report on Operation Accent. A full psychological breakdown of Anna's personality, tendencies, even trigger points. It detailed how Brad's public mockery of her accent wasn't spontaneous. It was calculated, designed to elicit public sympathy and internal rebellion. They wanted to see if she'd break, or if she'd fight back. And they'd been watching the whole time. Even the HR recording? Scripted. Edited. Purposeful. "You were the most promising candidate," Rachel said flatly. "But you became unstable." Unstable. Anna snapped, slamming the folder shut. "You destroyed lives for a test. You exploited trauma for data. And now you're telling me I'm unstable?" Martin finally looked up. His eyes weren't cold anymore. They were tired, remorseful, but not innocent. "They're going to pin it on me, Anna," he said softly. "That was always the plan." Anna froze. "What?" Brad leaned back, clasping his hands behind his head. "Every good operation needs a fall guy." Martin knew the risk. He agreed to it. The media will eat it up. Disgruntled former executive leaks private employee data. We clean house, you disappear, and the brand survives. That's how it's always worked. The room was spinning now. But then Anna smiled. Just slightly. Because she had come prepared. She reached into her bag and placed a small device on the table, a wireless router connected to her hidden cloud server. The moment she hit send, everything, videos, documents, audio, chat logs, went public. She'd set it to blast across every major social media platform, leak to journalists, and even upload to trending YouTube channels under anonymous whistleblower accounts. And she had built in a verification chain that made the data undeniable. Brad stood, furious now. Rachel lunged for the device, but it was too late. "You should have deleted your own files," Anna whispered. Sirens wailed in the distance. For the first time, fear crossed Brad's face. He reached for his phone, barking orders, but no one answered. Rachel backed away slowly, as if her world had just collapsed beneath her. Martin closed his eyes. Anna turned to leave. But then, a voice came from the speaker in the ceiling. One that none of them expected. Test concluded. Subject achieved full self-agency. Phase 3 activated. Anna froze. So did everyone else. The monitors on the wall flickered, then showed live footage not just of the building, but of people watching them. Government officials, lawyers, unknown agents, and a logo none of them recognized. This had gone beyond Greystone. Anna wasn't the only one who had been monitored. They had been too. As the building lights dimmed and the emergency lockdown activated, Anna realized with a chilling certainty she hadn't just brought down a corrupt company. She had triggered something far more powerful. And whatever Phase 3 was, it had already begun. The storm had passed. The rain had finally stopped, but the chaos of that night lingered in the air like an unresolved tension, refusing to be swept away by the calm. Anna stood at the edge of the rooftop, her eyes scanning the city below, her thoughts racing. She had dismantled the system that had tried to break her, exposed the conspiracy that had been set in motion long before she even understood the game she'd been forced to play. But now, in the aftermath, as the sirens and flashing lights faded into the distance, she wasn't sure if the victory felt like freedom or a deeper trap. The public fallout from the data leak had been immediate and violent. News stations ran 24/7 coverage, airing the documents and video footage that Anna had released. The company had scrambled, but it was too late. What had once been a hidden empire of manipulation and control had been exposed to the world. Greystone's executives had been arrested, their careers destroyed in a matter of hours. The media couldn't stop talking about it, their headlines flooded with words like betrayal, corruption, and psychological warfare. But despite the chaos, Anna's face never appeared on the news. Her name, though it had become a symbol of resistance and truth, remained largely anonymous, a shadow in the collective consciousness. Her heart still ached from the betrayal, though. The people she trusted, the ones who had been her colleagues, her friends, had turned out to be nothing more than pawns in a much larger game. Brad, Rachel, Martin, they were all gone, their names dragged through the mud, their careers destroyed by their own greed. But Anna couldn't bring herself to feel satisfaction. In the end, she wasn't sure if they had ever been fully to blame. They were products of a system that had shaped them, had twisted them into something else, something unrecognizable. She had spoken to Martin one last time before everything crumbled. His words still echoed in her mind, heavy with regret. They made me do it, Anna. I thought I was helping, thought I could control it, but they were always one step ahead. There had been no easy way to forgive him, and yet, there was a part of her that could see the fear in his eyes. Fear that he hadn't been in control either. No one had been. As the hours stretched on, Anna found herself standing on the rooftop, looking at the city that had both been her cage and her battleground. She had been through hell, yet here she was alive, free, but still haunted by the questions that remained unanswered. Who was behind Greystone? Who had truly pulled the strings? The mysterious logo that had appeared on the surveillance monitors just before the lockdown, the same one that no one seemed to recognize, still gnawed at her. There was something much larger than Greystone, much older than the company itself. She could feel it, creeping in the shadows of her thoughts, an unfinished puzzle that mocked her attempts to find closure. As the wind picked up, carrying with it the distant sounds of the world moving on, Anna made a decision. She would leave. She would disappear into the night, leaving behind the remnants of her old life. But she wasn't running from her past. She was stepping away from the chaos, taking a breath before diving into the next chapter of her life. The leak had shaken the world, yes, but the work wasn't over. There was more to uncover, more to fight for. She wouldn't be the one to take down the system, not yet. But she would be the one to make sure it couldn't hide anymore. Just as she turned to leave the rooftop, a single text message appeared on her phone. It was simple, yet the words hit her like a punch to the gut. It's not over. We're just getting started. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She knew the truth now. She had learned to trust no one, to question everything. Her enemies might have fallen, but the game was still in motion, and the players had only just begun to show their hands. The weight of the message settled in her chest. There would be no easy escape. No peaceful conclusion. The system that had tried to break her wasn't just a corporate entity. It was a network, a complex web of power that stretched far beyond her comprehension. And somewhere, deep in the undercurrents of the city, something darker was waiting. Something that, despite all her efforts, she had yet to fully uncover. As Anna walked away from the rooftop, the last remnants of the storm disappeared, and the world seemed to exhale. But for Anna, there was no exhale. Only the rush of adrenaline, the hunger for truth, and the realization that this wasn't just her fight anymore. This was bigger than her. And the only thing she could do now was move forward, head down, heart heavy, but always ready for what came next. Because the truth wasn't just about knowing, it was about surviving.